play with it and change it. There will be another lightning talk later today which will explain details about open source hardware. I'm using, you need 4 components to build a device. You need a development board, after that you need an LCD display, and you need a micro SD card to boot the software on the hardware, and of course you need a power supply. So basically you can use an adapter or some kind of a battery. There are plenty of development boards, and most of these open source hardware development boards rely on processor manufactured by Owinner, and the other company which is also popular is Rockchip. My device is using an Owinner processor and a board from Olimex. Olimex is a Bulgarian company, and I live in Bulgaria as well. So it was a nice coincidence that the headquarters of the Bulgarian company is nearby my home, so I can go there, get dedicated support, and get the boards. It's much easier for me to work with them. They have great support. This is the model that you see here is A10S Olexino Micro, and I was also able to boot Tizen on A20 Olexino Micro. There is another company, a Chinese company manufacturing open source hardware boards called, their line of boards is called QB board, because the leading developer there is called Tom QB, and his friends, they stand behind their open source project. So you're free to buy Olimex or QB board, and you'll do what I do at home. So about the LCD display, there are different sizes of displays. You should make sure that your display is compatible with the board that you have. It will be nice if the display is touchscreen, of course. I have a few tips to share, mistakes that I did while I was working on this project, and I would like to share with you them, and please make sure that you won't repeat my mistakes. First of all, buy a USB serial cable. This is a priceless cable, because with it you can debug and inspect why the bootloader or the kernel is not booting properly. It is also nice to use cables and power supplies that are recommended by the manufacturer of the development board. This can save a lot of time. Another thing is that these type of boards are booting from a micro SD card or NAND. My personal recommendation is not to buy a NAND board if you're planning to port Linux distribution or Android distribution or Tizen on it, because it's much easier to work with a development board that boots only from micro SD card. By the way, if you're familiar with Raspberry Pi, like I started with a Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi boots from SD card. Please know that this kind of boards, in most cases, boot from micro SD. And one last tip: if something is not working for the first time you run it, and this is actually happening quite a lot when you're working with software on this kind of boards, try to restart. I know it sounds silly, but sometimes it helps. So now, please close your eyes and try to imagine iPod. You know, the bright and shiny iPod of Apple. Now I'm going to show you something made at home. Prepare to see the homemade iPod killer. This is how it looks. It's not exactly a tablet. Actually, when my mother saw this, she said, "Oh my, would you like me to give you my tablet for a while?" And I said, "No, this is something much better." So what you see here is a board from Olimex, A10S Olexino Micro, and touch screen is attached on it, and this is a screenshot of Tizen 2.0 working on the device. It has a bunch of cables, basically an adapter, a USB, and a LAN cable. But actually, if you are good at crafting, maybe you can make some kind of a nice boxing for it and put it inside. By the way, this is a homemade tablet device with open source hardware, which is capable of booting any Linux distribution as well as Android. So it's not just Tizen device, it's a multi operating system device. Now, I would like to share with you my open source project. It's called Tizen Sungsi. The second word in it, Sungsi, comes from the Linux Sungsi. Linux Sungsi is a GitHub open source project which has a kernel which is compatible with all development boards which have all-winner processors. So there are three things that you should get working to have a Linux distribution that is running fine on or at least booting fine on a development board. You need the bootloader first, then you need a kernel, and since I'm using all-winner devices with all-winner processors, I have to use the Linux Sungsi kernel. And finally, the third component is the root file system of the distribution. And depending the distribution that I choose, I put a different file system. So basically, what I did was to take the Linux Sungsi kernel and U-boot loader to build them from source, then to prepare a micro SD card. Luckily for me, there was a project at the Tizen community which was porting Tizen IVI to Panda board. So I took the source code available for Panda board, and I created a Tizen platform image for Panda board and mixed the Linux Sungsi with it. And finally, I got a micro SD card which was booting Tizen successfully on my device. The whole process of making this is it's not difficult, but it's time consuming because there are a lot of things that you have to do. So if you have these kind of development boards and you just want to try out Tizen on it without losing a lot of time, you can grab a precompiled Tizen Sungsi image, save it on a SD card, and boot it on your device. A few words. I would like to share a few words about Tizen platform images. So basically, the Tizen is capable of running on Intel devices as well as ARM devices. There are a few things that you should do. First, you have to install the Tizen development tools, and to set up the development environment. For this thing, you need a computer or a virtual machine running with a Linux distribution. The compatible and recommended Linux distribution by Tizen are Ubuntu, OpenSUSE, Fedora, as well as CentOS. The development tools that you're going to need are the Git build system and the MIC. With them, you can create RPM packages. And finally, when you have the RPM packages, you can prepare the Tizen platform image. Tizen is hosted at tizen.org. It is using Git for source control system, and it also has a Gerrit, which is used for code reviews. So you can download the source code freely. After that, you have to build these RPM packages for ARMv7. Please note that a lot of people are asking, can you boot Tizen on a Raspberry Pi? The short answer is that yes, in general it should be possible, but the whole toolchain of Tizen is made for ARMv7 compatible processors, and Raspberry Pi is a bit older, so it's with ARMv6. You can boot it, but it won't work well, and it would be much harder than if you're using that kind of development boards that I've just shown you. Finally, you have to create the platform image using MIC, and to create a micro SD card with 4 partitions, to put everything on the micro SD card, to plug it inside your development board, and to boot it. Depending on what kind of display are you using, you have to configure whether it's using an LCD display, like the tablet that I showed you, or HDMI output. The easiest way to do it is to adjust one text file called UNV. There is a specific format of it, and it's really the easiest way to adjust displays. Thank you very much, and if you have any questions, please, we have 3 or 4 minutes left. Yes?
Right, we need the question for the video stream.
LCD screen.
If you want, I can repeat the question.
If I'm looking for some LCD screen, little LCD screen for Tizen.
I beg your pardon?
LCD screen, you know?
Yeah, the screen that I'm using is manufactured by Olimex. So I just bought the screen from the manufacturer of the board because this was the easiest way to get it working on this specific board.
Okay, so it's
so before you buy a board, make sure that the vendor is recommending a display, and it's you should go for a display that is recommended.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?